Hello, hello, YouTubers. I'm Angela Logan bringing you everyday shenanigans, and I'm going to bring you an update on the Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey case. Okay, story goes like this. Miss Kathleen Zellner, who is representing the appeals for Mr. Stephen Avery, she has put in a motion to have his case, Mr. Stephen Avery's case, looked at again. You know, he's exhausted a lot of appeals, and so what she has done is gone to the extent of trying to get him another new trial or evidentiary hearing. And in her hearing, of this hearing, she is claiming that there was a discretion for scientific testing, ineffective counsel, and supplemental motion regarding human bones found in the Manitowoc County gravel pit. So those were three stipulations for her grounds for wanting Mr. Stephen Avery to get a new trial or evidentiary hearing. So we'll wait to see how that unfolds. And let me repeat that first one. It was, because my handwriting is so horrible. It was abused discretion for scientific testing. 2, ineffective counsel. She felt like he had ineffective counsel at the time of his trial, and that there was not granting him supplemental motion regarding human bones found in the Manitowoc County gravel pit. So those are the 3 issues for her grounds for wanting Mr. Avery to have a new trial. We'll see how that goes. But as far as Brendan Dassey goes, his attorneys have till November 13th. The governor of Wisconsin, Mr. Tony Evers, the current governor, his office has till November 13th to respond to Dassey's petition for clemency. So we will see if he will either get a pardon or a commutation of his remaining sentence. That's what his lawyers are seeking in his in the petition to grant Mr. Dassey clemency. And as many of you know who followed the case or have followed the case, he was declined. His case was declined by, it's a little late. His case was declined by the Supreme Court June of this year. So he's exhausted everything you can think of as far as appeals and everything, trying to get, the case moved, overturned, whatever, new appeals. He's exhausted everything. So this is the last step in trying to get Mr. Brendan Dassey freed. It's that his attorneys go to the current governor, Mr. Tony Evers, and they're seeking clemency for him. And this is the last legal option available for Brendan Dassey, So I don't know what to say. Like I said, I watched the documentary. It was a lot of information to dissect. And I also told you all, that someone had sent in a confession letter to Ms. Zellner, Mr. Avery's attorney. And I don't know what is the fallout of that. I don't know if she even believes that. I think I read somewhere that she didn't believe in that, confession. I don't know if it's just some crackpot bored to death, wanting him 5 minutes of fame, although he's incarcerated for murder, in the correctional system. He's not getting out, won't be getting out. So, who knows? People are so crazy and wacky to do all kind of nonsense. But one thing I wanted to say about this Stephen Avery situation, I could see how one could think the police set him up, especially when I go back in my memory to the blood vial that was put up in storage with his blood taken from, I think, 96 or somewhere back in those. And there was a pinhole at the top of the plastic cap. And you could see it as clear as day. And in your mind, you're thinking, well, how did that get in there? So that would make you wonder, did they stick a needle in there and plant the blood in that Teresa Halbach's SUV? Is it possible? But then you have to lay it all out once you start doing that conspiracy theory of the police being involved. You have to also say they went to the scene at the salvage yard. They found the car. So now they're automatically thinking this guy did it. So that means now here comes the conspiracy, and where'd they get the bones? They got planted on his property. You see where I'm going? That even if, let's say, they went to the scene, the salvage yard, found her car, started thinking the worst, that, yeah, hey, I think this guy did it, kind of like that old OJ stuff. Ooh, I think he did it. Well, let's start doing some stuff, planting some stuff. Okay, let's just say for the record, get to the salvage yard, find her SUV. You're thinking the worst, that he's behind murdering this girl. So now you start digging up old blood vials and things that was put in storage. There's only one problem with that. Even if they went and planted blood inside her car, inside his house, planted her blood. Well, his blood, rather. How are you going to plant anything pertaining to her in his house? Because you couldn't do that because you didn't have a body. So you see, that's where the conspiracy is a problem. Because one, you would have had to willingly went out and killed this girl and disposed of her body, burned it up, carried it on his property. So that's why I don't know if I can believe that they went as far as killing the girl. Because when you start talking about conspiracy, you have to say, you have to, lay it all out. At what level of conspiracy? Are we talking about planting evidence inside his house, inside her truck? Now, what about the dead person? That they also killed that girl to set up Mr. Avery. I weigh it all out. And see, that's where I have the conflict, is that even if they went in the storage, police storage, got the vial, stuck a pin in it, a needle, drew blood, planted it in the house and her truck after they found her truck on his property, you still can't explain how the police would have been able to plant her bones, because you got to remember, she hadn't yet been found. So all the police would have as far as planting evidence would be digging up an old vial and planting blood at his house in her car. And they said they went numerous times to his house for search warrants, which I thought was odd. I don't understand why you have to go numerous times to someone's house to search. I found that very peculiar. But what I can't agree on is how they would be able to plant her remains on his property. Because you have to remember, nobody knew where she was. Nobody had seen her. And it wasn't until after the many search warrants on his property is when remnants of bones were found on the property. So I can't believe in my right mind the cops put her bones there, because nobody even knew where she was. And if it's true that part of her bones was over at this other Manitowoc gravel pit, I always wondered about that. How'd she get there? Who took her there? Mr. Avery took her there, burned her off-site at another facility at this gravel pit, then carried those bones over to his house and burned them on his property. That seems kind of weird, because it's like, why would anybody do all this transferring of stuff? If I killed you over here and I burned your body over here, wouldn't I leave you there? Why in the world would I burn you over here at this gravel pit, then carry you back to my house and drop you on my property? That wouldn't make no sense. So I also wondered about that. And I don't think maybe they did actual evidence searching and thorough evidence searching at that Manitowoc gravel pit. Because they're basically trying to make it seem like there's two places that her remains were. There and on Mr. Avery's property. And that's where that makes no sense. So see, a lot of the case that can sway you either way don't make no sense. But let me tell you something else that came to my mind. I know The Making of a Murderer. I know these people made this documentary because it was fascinating, and it was baffling to think a person would do 18 years in penitentiary and come out and murder someone. But let's also remember, he's had 18 years to be very bitter and angry. Let's just say for the record, 18 years is a long time to give up your life and your freedom. And I say the average person would feel some type of way toward a woman. Because you got to remember, it's a woman who got him in there in the first place with the false claim that he tried to attack her or attacked her. That's how he got the 18 years. But then you find out through DNA, he didn't do it. So mind you, a man being incarcerated for 18 years in a nasty, gritty prison by some woman saying, yeah, that's the guy who attacked me. And years later, you're exonerated. Hell yeah, he feels some type of way. I could see him hating women, loathing them. And that crossed my mind when I was watching the documentary. What if he did do this? What if he was bitter and angry and he did exactly what he was accused of from bitterness? And we know it is possible. Because that's a long time to give up your freedom. And then come back out to that same rinky-dink small town and people still thinking you may have did it. But even though the DNA says you didn't do it, but you still got to go back to that same town where your family is not highly favored. You all are still considered outcasts there. I said it'd be a hard walk. I said it'd be a very hard walk. So how about in his mind he said, hey, I'm going to do exactly what they said, what they thought I did do years before. It's very interesting. Very, very interesting. I guess, like I said, my main issue with the case were the bones found on his property. I always question, how could the police and any outsider put the bones on his property without him or somebody close by, family members who lived adjacent to the property, not seeing somebody walking around, parking their car, something. I just don't see how that would have been possible. The only thing I did come up with, if Mr. Avery didn't kill that girl, let's just say he didn't, who else could have done it besides scratch the police? I thought about that other nephew because he had access to the property. He was close to the property. Who's to say he was the one? After that day, he saw Miss Harbeck go to Stephen's house to do the car business and the picture taken and yah. She left. He followed in behind her, stopped her on the road, used the rules for her to look at a car of his, and then boom, he did what he did to her. Took her car and parked it on the property without being seen at the salvage yard. And then later, disposed of her bones on his uncle's property. I always thought that he may have had something to do with it, especially when you talk about all that porn and stuff they found. Oh, heinous, disgusting porn, violent porn. Because we all know that is a trigger for deviant behavior down the road. And I think that was overlooked, and I think the DA dropped the ball with that nephew. And all those images. And like they said, it wasn't no just going in there once a day looking at this type of violent porn. It was daily, weekly. So that's something to ponder on. But know that, besides that, Brendan may have a chance to be pardoned. If the governor decides, the governor has till, like I said, November 13th of this year to make a decision. And Ms. Zellner is seeking a new trial and evidentiary hearing on behalf of Mr. Avery. I'll keep you all updated for all you true crime fans. And I'll be back. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sharing. Till the next video. Bye-bye.